All right, I had to get that off my chest. Kam Buckner, welcome to the show.
Benny J, thank you for having me, brother, as always.
Yes, man, ladies and gentlemen, I teased him at the start. He sounds like Barry White. You sound even more like Barry White after hearing me rant and rave about Michael Joseph Madigan. Before we get to the meat of the conversation, any thoughts on how I opened, or any thoughts about Michael Joseph Madigan's pending sentencing? Go ahead.
I will say this, Ben, when you think about the fact that the federal government is suggesting over a decade, 12 and a half years in sentencing for the former Speaker of the Illinois House, and you look at the sentences that folks have had to serve in the last few years, but more specifically, and I think this is what you're getting at, this is under the Donald Trump Department of Justice, right? And I was one of the Democrats who said during the campaign, don't harp on his 34 or 36 felonies, right? Because there's enough people in our communities that have similar backgrounds, and that if Trump being a felon is the only reason we don't vote for him, then that's not enough, right? I think there's a lot of reasons that we should have pushed back against him. But just thinking about the 34 felonies and thinking about this White House and this administration and what they have stood for, and then to hear this DOJ recommend 12.5 years for an 83-year-old man, to me is crazy. I don't know how to split the baby on this, what the right sentence is or what the right punishment is, but I will say 12 and a half years is crazy to me.
I'm with you 100% of 12 and a half years. And when I saw the article, I forget when it dropped, Cam, I think it was Friday or whatever, I just laughed out loud. I go, you got to be kidding me. Yeah. It's so outrageous that they're hitting him with this. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is letting people out left and right. All right. So before we hit the mic, I was texting my old friend, Mick Dumke, my dear friend, Mick Dumke, partner in crime. And I said, hey, Mick, Cam's coming on the show. You got any questions for me? And he came right back. And so it's something you should know about Kam Buckner, ladies and gentlemen. One of the reasons why reporters flock to him to talk about the Bears, well, there's two reasons. One, it's in Soldier Field's in his district. But I'd say just as important, you're one of the few I'm doing this off the top of my head, one of the few legislators who actually played football on a high college level. Big Ten player, University of Illinois. In fact, when I first heard about him, you were just finishing up your career at Illinois. That's when I first heard about you. And played at Morgan Park. So he knows a lot about the game. I text him pretty much every Bears game, be crying. Bears, I'm a diehard. So we have a lot of football questions, both team related, okay, and stadium related. Well, then we'll get to the RTA, et cetera, Cam. So this is a great question for Mick. He asked me to ask you this, okay? And I'm just going to read Mick's question to you. We'll get with this. Because right now the Bears got that big bear paw out get someone to help them pay for a domed stadium, either on Chicago's lakefront or in Arlington Heights. They disregarded my suggestion to put it on the south side of Chicago. So here we go. Here's what Mick wants to ask you. As a former football player, Cam, why are the Bears insisting on playing indoors? Or why is the Big Ten, I guess it's still the Big Ten, but it's called something else now. Why the Big Ten championship has to be in a dome? Is the sport going soft? Play in the mud, okay? All right, Cam, that's the question. Go ahead.
Well, listen, thank you to the great Mick Dumke for that question. I often think about that, right? The clamoring for a domed stadium and the reasoning behind that. I can tell you very largely, it is because organizations like the Bears across the country want to be able to host the Super Bowl. And the NFL typically has said that if it is less than 50 or 60 degrees in February in the city in which the Super Bowl will be hosted, then they won't do it there. They've made some exceptions You may remember a Super Bowl a few years ago back at the Meadowlands in New Jersey, home of the Jets and the Giants. And that ended up being a pretty cool Super Bowl. The weather held up. But the coin of the realm, the thing that stays like on the mind of these NFL executives is that they want to be able to host a Super Bowl. Now, on top of my time playing on the football field, I mean, I spent some time working when I was working for the mayor of New Orleans, working on a Super Bowl 47, I believe it was, that was in New Orleans. It was the Harbaugh Bowl, the Ravens versus the 49ers. And so I was the mayor's point person on that in the city of New Orleans. And what I can tell you is that while Super Bowls are fun, they do have a pretty decent bit of economic activity for a 2 or 3 day span. They don't do much for a city, right? But for the folks who are calling the shots, they want to do it. It's a feather in the hat, and so they want to do it, right? And so that's where this Dome Stadium thing is coming from. But to the meat of a mixed question, I love playing outside. I love the cold. I love feeling those hits. And it's something that I think makes us a little bit better equipped for this game in the Midwest when you have to make folks play outside in our elements, man. And so I don't like dome stadiums. Maybe retractable domes so you can decide how you do this, but I like playing outside in the elements, man. It's part of the Midwest story as far as I'm concerned.
I got to go back to the opening line that you made, which caught me off guard. So I'd like you to elaborate a little bit. So this goes back to your days working with the mayor of New Orleans as a key aide, working on bringing the Super Bowl there. I kind of wish New Orleans was the site of the Super Bowl every year, but that's neither here nor there.
I agree. New Orleans and Miami, back and forth. Those are the two places they deserve to be.
Yeah. I mean, why not? I mean, yeah. So here's the thing. And you could work out an arrangement where the teams get subsidized. If Miami and New Orleans are getting them every year, then I'm sure the NFL and their lawyers can figure out a way to cut up the pie so other teams benefit. But here's my question to you. That was an interesting point you made. There's not a huge benefit for a city to host a Super Bowl. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, just the amount of time and energy and resources it requires from a city. Some cities do it very well. To your point, New Orleans has had 11 Super Bowls. Miami, I think, is at 10 or 11. Some cities do it very well, and I do think that if Chicago had the opportunity, that we would show up much like we did for the DNC, right? But it drains so much from the resources, the finite resources that a city has, and the heads and beds, the hotel occupancy, the restaurant tax, the folks who are drinking at bars. All of that is fun and it's great and it matters. But you got to also realize that a big football stadium holds 70,000 people. The biggest ones hold 100, and so there's a very small universe of folks that you're pulling money from in these spaces. You know what else generates a lot of money? I also helped to do this when I was in New Orleans at WrestleMania, right? But nobody talks about that the way they talk about Super Bowls. And so I think the question often is for these cities, and you get the same type of question when you talk about Olympic Games and things like that, is the juice worth the squeeze, right? Is what you're doing enough for what you're going to get back from it? And in many cases, the answer is no. So being to your earlier point, I've been a huge proponent of saying that maybe the NFL should find 5 or 6 cities, like you said, New Orleans, Miami, and now you got Vegas and LA who are part of that group, who should probably rotate. Yes. And let the Super Bowls be there, because what also is true for us who believe in fiscal responsibility when it comes to public dollars, the stadium sweepstakes that happens every year or every few years. The NFL they're telling these teams that they cannot host a Super Bowl if they don't have a new stadium, and who ends up paying for that? Taxpayers, right? The fans. And so, if the NFL was a little bit more responsible with the way that they've asked their member organizations to operate, we would be in a better spot. So find somewhere else for it to go, and build on that. I think it's good for all of us.
Yeah. And by the way, I should have mentioned Vegas and the NBA's Cup, which is the regular season in the season tournament is permanently located in Vegas, and they promote it as such, and I don't see any reason why they should move it anywhere else, because it's just like, people, it just seems so natural to want to go to Vegas, well, definitely for a basketball game, and because that has to be indoors, although it would kind of be cool when you think about it, Cam, to have an outdoor basketball game in front of like 100,000 people for the cup thing. That actually kind of cool too.
It would be.
All right. So we've decided that it's not worth our while to bend over backwards to build a dome stadium, and yet we are bending over backwards. And the papers today are filled with stories about how, once again, I'll just read the Sun-Times headline: Bears blocked from stadium help again as legislative clock runs out. And it was about 2 weeks ago that the stories about the Bears stadium reunited with the news. The Bears announced that they were going to stop looking primarily at Chicago's lakefront, and they were just going to concentrate on Arlington Heights and the old Arlington Heights Stadium. And you gave a quote to the Sun-Times, which I texted to you. I thought I loved it so much. And the quote is this: "Trying to marry one city and date the other," Kam Buckner. And then you put a tweet out, which I don't have in front of me, which ripped the Bears even more than that quote. So why don't you go back and explain to people what you meant by trying to marry one city and date the other?
Well, we know 2 years ago now, 3 years ago, maybe the Bears purchased land in Arlington Heights for $297 million, which to many of us was a signal that they were serious, very, very serious about moving the team. It was the first real action we had seen that wasn't just based in rhetoric. And then they had a period where they weren't being clear about what they wanted. And then out of nowhere, last year, they do this huge press conference where they put together these beautiful renderings, and he gets people's hopes up and say, the Bears are going to stay in Chicago right here on the lakefront, just a few feet from where they currently sit at Soldier Field, but where the Waldron deck is, right? And so there were many of us that were a little bit curious about that, wondering had they had the conversations with the folks who have to make those decisions, including the state, who they were asking for money. Mind you, when the Bears did this press conference, it was Kevin Warren, I believe Karen Murphy, a few other Bears folks, and Mayor Johnson. Not a single official from the state of Illinois was there. In fact, I was there as a spectator just to hear what was going on. And I got super nervous as they began to talk more and more about state money. And it was very clear that no one had agreed to anything. In fact, Ben, I don't mind saying this on your air, and I've said it to people publicly. I faked the phone call. I faked taking the phone call, and I left because I did not want to be stuck there answering questions about state funding when no one had a conversation with us, right? And so, they did that, and then they said, Chicago's our place. We're going to make it work. And they went back and forth for a while. And then they have now said in the last couple of weeks that their focus is on Arlington Heights. Now, I'll tell you what I told the team, Ben. I asked them, what does the word focus mean? Because in my world, if you spend $300 million for a piece of land, then you probably have been focusing on it the whole time. But the Bears have been trying to have their cake and eat it too. They've been trying to play it both ways, hoping that they could find a way to get money from the state or the city to keep the stadium in Chicago, but also trying to play nice with Arlington Heights, who is the city where their new land is where the new land is located. And so I just, what I've said from the beginning is that if the Bears are clear about what they want and how to get there, then maybe we can figure out how to work things. But they've not been honest. They've not been an honest broker in these conversations. And so I'm a pretty mild-mannered guy and a pretty optimistic guy. But I've had to be a little bit more aggressive with this organization and the way they've operated. It's been really disheartening.
Do you think they have a strategy? I feel like asking you this question sort of like whenever I have conversations with many guests about Trump's tariffs. Is there a strategy here, or is the man just a lunatic? So is there a strategy here, or are they just confused? Go ahead.
There doesn't seem to be a strategy. They're kind of piecemealing, and they're all over the place. I believe that they have at least some inkling that at some point they can just push things through Springfield and get what they want. However, Springfield does not operate that way anymore. The days of stopped clocks are over. And you know that reference very well, being as we talked earlier about our friend Jerry Reinsdorf and the Chicago White Sox and Governor Thompson, right? But I can't figure out what they're doing. And if you look and you pay attention to what's going on around the country, You look at the stadiums like the ones on the West Coast recently who have been privately funded. You look at the referenda in places like Kansas City, where they've got a world-class football team. And they've asked the people of that very small market whether or not they would be willing to pay for a better venue for that team to play in. And the people overwhelmingly said no. The days of that type of public financing are long gone. I told someone, Ben, it's like if the Bears wanted to do that, they should have probably started it 15 years ago, because that is no longer the place that we're in. It's like being the third elephant trying to get on Noah's Ark. You've missed your time, right? It's over.
Oh my God, I've never heard that line. That's a good line. The third elephant trying to get on it, and it's kind of crowded already.